had glovers from Flagstaff and Tucson, which are both about 2 hours away. And we also had a local community page even before Phoenix Gloving Community and Amazing was trying to help expand the communities in each region. And so glovers who came to Phoenix for an event, but lived in Flagstaff or Tucson or any of the surrounding cities, we would tell them about our other, fan page essentially and get it added there, and we'd be able to coordinate and meet and get closer there.
When was that that gloving page started?
So it went through 3 iterations. I want to say It started in 2011 as like a gloving fam or something. I'm not 100% certain. But when I was there, it was just Glovers Anonymous, and it was kind of like our own little AZ section of Glovers Lounge, and it was probably maybe 150, 200 people. How back in those days, like the rave scene of the community had its own little Facebook page.
Yes.
And we had our own specifically for Glovers, just there. So it was kind of like, if you know, because it was a private group. So we would always post our light shows there. And then, it's really, when you're in a closer community like that, it's easier to give constructive feedback, because not only do you feel more comfortable maybe saying something that something in the show was not as good presentationally as it could have been, but also have that closeness, but it's also kind of easier to receive the feedback in a non-negative way because you know how the person is saying it, even if they're saying it over text.
Right. That's really interesting, man. I think that the Hawaii and like Arizona community was very similar in that regard, because I remember in the whole like Hawaii's like little page, right? It used to be like a bunch of ravers that would educate people on drug use. And you know what I mean? It was more about education, like how to act within the scene. Sure, there were like a couple bad apples. I noticed you said 3 iterations. Can you kind of go deeper on the iterations?
Unfortunately, well, I said 3 because eventually Glovers Anonymous became Phoenix Gloving Community once the Amazing.
Oh, I see.
So we switched it, and we just kind of like, well, we're going to have a public loving group because now we want anybody to be able to find it. So outside of the Glovers Anonymous, I'm not really too sure what happened on that page, other than I think it was just a smaller version. And as more people kind of figured it out, or old pages, you know how it used to be, the admins didn't know on Facebook anymore, and they didn't relinquish permission for that.
Dude, so, my God.
Dude.
Dude, so were there 3 different pages, or just the title changed?
I think it ended up being 3 completely different pages. But
wow.
I'm still in Glovers Anonymous, and obviously PGC is active. So
yeah.
It's you can still post and view the posts there, but as a whole, I think most of the Arizona community is just reverted to posting back to Glover's Lounge just because of the interaction.
Right. It's like, why post on our little community page when you could just share on GL where everybody can see it and you get more likes? You know what I mean? There's something about like you feel like more like you want to get more likes, essentially, at least from the way that I perceived it. Where I was like, why am I gonna post on this page when there's GL?
Exactly.
This is a really I love this because back in my day. Wanting to turn like the Facebook pages were private, right? So actually that was one of the biggest things about the 808GC, the Hawaii Gloving Committee, that there was a big altercation specifically with me and the old mods, because the whole GGN thing was popping off, and I was like, man, we need to make this public. We're trying to grow this, but some of the OGs in Hawaii back in the day, they wanted to keep the group page tight knit, and it was like a mindset thing, and I just couldn't understand it. Fortunately, we're on good terms now with me, some of the OGs, and we all see that growing this thing is ultimately way more important than trying to keep it like tight knit. So that's really, I love that you brought that up, because it was such a big problem. Back in the day, that was a thing, and I don't understand why Facebook just can't make private pages public, especially when you hit a threshold of, I believe, I might be fucking up this number. It was like probably like, is it 300 or 1,000? Like once you hit a certain number, you could not change the group page into public. And like I've considered starting a new Hawaii Gloving Facebook page, but man, that's just it's a lot of work, and it feels like there would be a divide just keep it tight knit, but just tell people if they want to join the Hawaii scene, just like the gloving community, just send them to the page. But I love that you brought up that point. I want to go to the very beginning, okay, like 2000 of Arizona, at least when you started, right? So I noticed you said there was around like maybe 3 years, you said, where there wasn't where you weren't there. Like, when did the Arizona scene officially start?
So from what I could find from my research, a lot of the Arizona glovers were people who lived in Arizona who went to California events and saw gloving there and brought the gloves back.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was like a few and far between, but there were 2 cats from PM who actually had lived out here, Geek and Frostbite, Elliot and Kyle, their actual names. And they had formed an Arizona team called Mindfucked MF out here, I want to say probably around 2010. And that was kind of the main team out here for a while until New got started in 2011. And
wow.
That's the big history there is that's where a majority of Arizona's history stems, is MF and New, because they were like a year apart in founding, and because they were the premier teams in Arizona, because outside of California there wasn't really much. So if you weren't traveling back and forth a lot or getting on sponsored teams, then it was kind of a goal to aspire to for the glovers out here. And so MF was probably about 4 or 5 people when I had started gloving, and there wasn't any sort of like official FNLs or anything. A lot of it was just at Kyle's house, and he would just have kickbacks. There were probably like 8 to 10 people, and it was kind of like what you had said. It was people who you ran into at events, and it's just like, yeah, if you want to come, then I'll shoot him a text, see if you can come too, and everybody would come through, and we trade shows at night, and then just go back. It wasn't until probably around 2013, 2014 that the scene really started exploding, and that's because Geek and other powerhouse in the AZ scene, AK, K-Tune, who had also been gloving, I want to say, since 9 and 10, because he's been part of the scene for that long and going to California events. They actually moved in together, and they had lived in 2 separate houses over 3 years, and because of that, and they were both very large community leaders who wanted the gloving scene here to thrive, they opened their house to FNLs, a bunch of parties for people who were part of the gloving scene. We even hosted Mumbles back in 2015 after his second IGC win.
Oh, wow.
So that was a really cool part. Literally, I want to say every glover in the scene at the time was at that party. There was probably like 60 or 70 heads there on top of other people. And I was like, fresh in the party scene, like this is literally the biggest house party I'd ever been to. I was definitely a little sketched out, but it was like, I'm not gonna not see Mumbles, and trying to trade with all the homies, because it was also the homies' birthday party, so it was kind of a double party situation, and everything was obviously fine, but it was just an experience, kind of just as it is. And then so they had that house for a year, and then the next year they moved into another house for 2 years, and that's where AK had started leading the GGN and with Amazing and everything. And I want to say we got our first face melt crew left from that house in 2015 for Foam Wonderland.
Gotcha. And could we go back? Who are the community leaders at that time with the house parties? You said AK and
Elliot, PM Geek.
PM Geek. Okay. Did you say something? No. There was a K-Tune or something like that. You said.
Yeah, K-Tune. That's Elliot's, or not Elliot. Sorry, that's AK's glover name.
Oh, Kate. Oh, yes, K-Tune, bro. I remember that name now. Sorry. Holy crap, bro. Okay, that's really cool. So they were basically in around 2000. You said 2010.
Yeah, so they I want to say 2010 is probably when they had started like trading and throwing lights, because all of the members of MF were telling me about going to shows and trading shows back in like. So then they moved in together, I want to say 2013, so 2014, 15 was all of that era. And then obviously Amazing got involved with the Global Gloving Network, and we started to try to grow it even more. So we had to secure essentially a public place where we could host FNLs because there's a really nice park right on a lakefront in Tempe, but unfortunately they have noise ordinances and they're not really keen on people bringing
Yeah.
speakers.
Right.
So Central, it was a great option. We only had like two FNLs there before they're kind of just like nah. But AK, being the fantastic leader that he was, found a park that was only like 30 minutes away, and it was pretty central to everybody. And that was kind of our base of operations from 2015 until probably last year when we started going back to smaller house-based parties, just because the community kind of is smaller again after COVID. So
Oh,
we're still
100%.
trying.
Yeah. This sounds exactly like Hawaii scene, bro. Like, exactly, just with different names. I still want to go back to around, like, 2011, 2012, when you first started. What were the styles like? What did that look like? Like, because I would imagine, because, PM Geek and PM Frostbite, were the styles similar to, like, PM?
So they were they were big in the scene in the sense that people wanted to meet with them and trade with them, and they did want to grow the community, but it was less about passing on a style and more about inspiring people to kind of go on their own. And that's
Right.
actually it's actually a very big point that we've just kind of continued to push here in Arizona. Like we'll share concepts and stretching routines and moves and anything that you want, but it's all we really try to encourage everybody to. It's just like, how do you want to put it together? Because there's no wrong answer in gloving, and
Right.
if you're trying to find a way to do something, then like just make it work, and it'll work. So I would say it's in that way being very individual. PM
Yeah.
influenced styles here, but in terms of like the actual movements and sequences, like pass throughs and flow that you see in a lot of older PM shows, obviously because those were the concepts of the time, they were around. But it's unless it's a glover who was gloving back then who stopped gloving back then, you don't see a lot of that still stylistically. Like
Right.
I would say A-Tune and Rec, not that Rec stopped gloving, but his style is just a very OG style. They use a lot of those OG kind of concepts, and I assume that's because of the stylistic influence. But because the scene didn't really start getting too terribly big until after I started gloving, and my introduction to gloving was actually through Greg Irwin's Finger Fitness,
Oh, wow.
because it accesses a lot of muscle dexterity as well as gives you scales to practice almost for like in a musical manner, which we're all gloving to music, so it's
Right.
not a bad. And because of that, I want to say, because I was always telling everybody, well, if you want something to practice, just go watch this video. I feel like that actually had a large influence on it, because a lot of people do focus on the grid and tech here, and I would say that that's probably the biggest stylistic influence that we've seen from back then.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really cool, man. That I think that's the main difference between Hawaii and Arizona, is that stylistic preference. I love that Arizona focused more on individuality more than like this is our style, and there's a very it's very territorial. I think just because of the culture, like in Hawaii, there's like this thing called like lomi massage, okay, where it's kind of like there's like a different way of massage, or like so then it's like a different mindset for each practitioner. That like there's different, I guess, clans, right? It's kind of like martial arts, where like there's these different gyms, and then like you kind of inherit their style. Where like have you seen any styles in Arizona that become more prominent though? Like styles that people would tend to lean towards to? Is there a style that Arizona lean more towards to? Is it really that drastically different amongst every Glover?
So I mean, I'm personally biased, and because I've
Yeah.
traded with people, for 5+ years, I'm able to kind of nitpick and pick apart the differences in style a little more easily than somebody who's only watched one show from each person.
Sure.
And I would say that a lot of it is very individualized, though. Obviously, tech is very prevalent in a lot of our shows, and grid work and tutting. I would say tutting and grid work are probably the most prevalent stylistically here in Arizona. But
Yeah.
again, it's applied differently in every show.
Right. That's freaking that's amazing, bro. Out of all the scenes, I barely trade with any Arizona Glovers. It's like I've never come face to face with an Arizona Glover, I think, to have to trade.
Right. It is kind of a running joke we have here in Arizona that we're just low key. You know, we're about us. If not, it's no big deal. We're still going to be here gloving. So, but I mean, obviously, it's always nice when people are just like, oh yeah, I've seen your shows online. I'm like, let's trade. And so, but I'm not the only person here that's happened to. I know Zan gets a lot of recognition.
Yeah.
Let's see who else. I mean, I know a lot of Boo Boo, Hunter, all those other good people. Let's see, I have a list here. Ruel, obviously, Austin. There's Dusty, Preston, Raja, who posts shows from time to time. She's still around. She's one of the best glovers to come out of Arizona. I will stand by that. And then obviously some of the old school cats who don't kick it anymore. There was Phase One NASA, Ralph Esteban. He was a huge inspiration of mine. He was gloving until about 2017. There was also MF Splash, Jeremy Hoffman. He was one of the two. He had feature videos with Sweet E Lights back in 2011 and 2012. So the first glover I actually ever met was in college, and he's just like, "Oh yeah, Jeremy's my homie," and I'm like, "What?" Like that's essentially saying like a rock star at that point. And then also John Smith, he was huge out here in the scene, but he kind of vanished because he was just doing his life thing as people do. But I mean, those are probably some of the best glovers to come out of Arizona if I had to say just out of personal experience. Did I mention Boo Boo?
Yeah, you did. You did. I'm writing down notes also, by the way. So if you see me type in, I'm like writing this all down so I can kind of organize my thoughts. But I noticed you said Ruel Smith. Is that the fuck? Am I getting that mixed up? Dude, I have a story about him. I remember I was at IGC 2016, and then like I'm like, man, my knees freaking hurt. And then so like I'm like looking at what everyone's like doing with their knees, and so the fuck has like this towel, and so he's kneeling on this towel. I'm like, bro, where'd you get that towel? And so, oh yeah, I just took it from the hotel that we were at. I'm like, genius. I was like, genius, bro. I should have took the freaking towel. But anyway, yeah, I think from my point of view, around like maybe 2016, like the only Arizona glover that I was able to really just pinpoint was the fuck, because he'd be blowing up all the time on GL all the time, right?
Yeah, if you ask any other glover who the most prominent glover in Arizona was, it's easily Ruel, just because of his online presence.
Interesting.
As well as his just sheer skill. I mean,
yeah,
he is just so crazy with it, and he's one of the kings of taking that individualized style and just pushing limits.
Super sick.
Because I remember when it was developing, and it like, to an untrained eye, it probably wasn't very easily digestible and might not look the greatest to like somebody who's just trying to get their face melted at a show because they're off their bean or whatever. But now, obviously, as he's had time to refine it over 10, 11 years, it is easily one of the best styles I've ever seen, and it's always so varied, so crisp, so precise, always different, and he's insane.
It's almost like the vibe that he gives when he throws. It's so technical, but something about it where it looks like he doesn't care and it's just going. Like something about it, yeah, this is me. I'm just going connection. And I think that speaks to exactly what you said, where it's like very tech and tutting grid work. He's like one of the. It's like I just think about his shows where he's just connection. Which is really cool because it's very much like Hawaii in that regard, where it's just connections. So I loved watching his style personally. So as far as like you said, there was like at that house party like 70 to 80 people, and you said that they're like probably all the glovers were there, right? That in my eyes kind of opened up like a big like clue as like the vibe. You said so as the scene started to get more prominent, right? Or after 2000, maybe 12, 2013, 14, that's when it started to have its uprising, right? What were those? How often were those sessions around when it started to pop off?
I mean, like the AK he was always in it, and because they had the basis to do it, they had the house to host people, And AK, just outside of the person that he just is a social butterfly. So he's got the connections to everything, like, and he is just anything he touches turns to gold. So he really was without him, the scene probably would not have been as big as it is, because he's always just like, oh yeah, I'm doing this gloving thing, if you want to come check it out, like, we're just doing it this Friday, come through. And so the sessions were probably every 2 weeks, maybe once a month. But obviously, because everybody was going to shows, he was planning for everybody to get together at the shows and hang out and trade shows there. And then because you're there and you're socializing there, you can be like, oh, well, I mean, if you want to get into gloving, you can always get into gloving here. And because he was in tight with everybody, there was another gloving vendor out here, Live Love Lights, Ryan, I believe his name was. And he was really big right before programmables came out, because he had a lot of bulb chips and bulbs and batteries and gloves. But once everybody got programmables, his business slowed down, and he ended up eventually selling everything to AK.
Wow.
Who in turn, when he got out of the game, ended up selling it to Cat. So it's all in good hands.
Yeah, dude, that's interesting. Is Cat's not from? He's California, right?
Yeah, he's from California. It's when you're that big into buying bulbs and lights and everything, and you have that much supply, it's kind of easy to be like, okay, well, I know who I'm going to go to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He's like the bulb guy. Everyone knows him for like one of those like connoisseurs, right? How big were those sessions?
On an average, I want to say like 20, 25 people.
Wow.
Probably like 15 of them were glovers, and then 10 people who were just there to kind of hang out, drink, smoke, whatever, have a good time with music, because they were still house parties or like park parties or whatever. So it was definitely part of the culture. And then as we got to bigger and bigger around, I want to say 2017, every 2 weeks we'd have sessions of like 35 to 50 people regularly. It was
bi-weekly,
yeah.
Wow.
Like I said, it was, I cannot stress how much AK put time and effort into making it sustainable, because I'm sure without him pushing it as hard to so many people, that not as many people would have shown up. And it's kind of like a catalyst effect. So like, if you only have 20 people and 10 of them are glovers, it's really easy to get all those trades that night. And then by the end of the night, you've got the 3-hour session. By the end of the night, people are more or less just talking, kicking back and hanging out. But if you have 30 people and 16 of them are glovers, you might not get every trade that session, or you might be like, oh, next time, or
yes,
or like I can't do it right now, I got to leave early. And so the more people you had there, the less trades you got in. So the more experiential each one was. So with 25, 30 glovers each time, you're only getting 7, 8 trades, maybe 10 if you're going quick.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll have 20 other trades that you didn't get that you want to come back the next time to make sure you get. And I think that once the scene started dwindling again, probably late 2019 because of the winter, and then COVID happened, so it never got to see that spring summer bloom like it normally does.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of fell off there. And when I started to try to do FNLs again back in the end of 2021, obviously it was cold again, and my best turnout was probably like 25, but that was because
that's a lot still though.
But compared to what it was,
right.
And only 15 of them are glovers, so you get all the trades. So the next one, people are like, who's going? I got all those trades last week. I'll see him again the next time, and then it devolves over time to where it's just kind of like, okay, instead of holding it at the park, we're just gonna hold it at a house. If anybody wants to come, hit up the address.
The bi-weekly sessions that were happening in 2017, were they all successful? Was it literally bi-weekly, or like maybe like a month it would be a bi-weekly? Like, was that throughout the entire year?
It was essentially throughout the entire year. I would say like maybe probably 4 weeks weren't because of travel or whatever. But if it wasn't AK hosting it, then myself or Ruel could just be like, yeah, I'm going to bring a speaker to a park. I'll make sure that there's glovers there, and people would show up. So it never necessarily had to be AK, because he had already put in the work, and he had, Ruel and I and other people in the community who wanted to have FNL. So it's more or less just kind of like, oh, can you grab the speaker on the way? I can't make it today. It's just like, of course, no biggie.
Right. Yeah, no, the reason why I'm kind of just like honing on the bi-weekly thing right now is because Hawaii used to have like monthly sessions, right? So we tried incorporating like bi-weekly sessions, but we've come to find out that because we had like so many sessions, we often found that less people would show up because they can just go to the one that happened 2 weeks from now, right? And then so what actually ended up happening would be there'd be like a select group of people that came to this week, and then there'd be a select group of people that came this week, and then therefore those two groups never really met. Like then they never really met. But there were only a couple of Glovers who really went to them all the time. I was one of them, and then we would have like impromptu sessions as well. Shout out to Royce Okazaki, because basically he sounds to me like the AK of your scene, because he was the one that basically held everything, right? And like I knew Hawaii was in good hands under his leadership. But basically, yeah, that was what happened. And then we were like, man, what's happening right now? And then like we never did the bi-weekly, and it was just a slow die off of like sessions happening. And, and then yeah, COVID and all that happened, and then basically the same thing, except man, 25 even for Hawaii nowadays, that's like a gold mine of a session. You know what I mean? Like 25. But you said 15 were Glovers. I think it's more like 25, but then like 10 of them would be Glovers here. So that's a really interesting like thing. Like I love that it was consistent and that it didn't really have that fall off that Hawaii did. Who are the big teams? Who like I know you mentioned New, right? New and we had I had MF, right? So like name all the big crews.
So I mean, New's really the only one that's still kind of active right now. But we did absorb all of the in-state Glovers essentially as the other teams kind of died off as well. And then when Ruel went to Middlelands in 2017, there were a bunch of national Glovers who were there, and he's just like, "You want to prospect? You want to prospect? You want to prospect? You want to prospect?" And so we did internationally, and we have a bunch of new chapters now. So we have we have New in Philadelphia East Coast with Catsby and Vincent, and then we have New in the Pacific Northwest in Washington with Day Day and Alex, who has since moved to Colorado, and obviously we got a bunch of people who ended up moving to Colorado. We had New in Tucson, but outside of New, because New is still around, we had MF, which was the premier team in Arizona for a time, but then it kind of just went the way of older teams. Everybody kind of got older and stopped participating in the chat and gloving in general. And I mean, I would say it's still active because it never officially disbanded, but nobody's talked in the chats in 7 years. So
yeah, dang,
it's. But when Tucson scene was getting big, there was Sad Boys that was run by Austin and Johan and Zach for a little bit there. We ended up absorbing all of them. They were on New at one point. It's still are. And there was a lot of the surviving members of MF who still gloved until like 2017, who were still cool. Some other people made their own other squad called SMS, Slow Mo Squad. And that actually, honestly, I forgot about another Glover who has been in it since the beginning. Alex Dahl, he goes by Ewok, but he is legitimately like a ghost. I literally only run into him at events. He has like zero social media presence, but he is one of the best Glovers. He's one of the few people who uses cube diffusers as cube diffusers.
Wow.
Like, he'll stack them, and it looks. He's got all of the cube stuff down. His style is absolutely incredible. But he was one of the captains of Slow Mo Squad. And then back when Elliot and AK were living together, because AK was on New and Elliot was captain of MF. And back then there was a lot of squad beef, so it was like you couldn't be on both, but they were obviously all chill. So they decided to form a separate squad called Kids Like Us KLU, and it was 4 members of MF, Chris, Tony, Cody, and Elliot, and then 4 members of New, Raja, Dusty, Ruel, and AK. And they formed and made Kids Like Us, and that was kind of like if it was like the best Glovers of Arizona team essentially. And for about 2 or 3 years, that was like the big team, because it was less about MF and less about new, and it was more like, let's come together and build this community team KLU. And that's actually Raja, AK, Cody, and I want to say it was Tony as well. They did a 4-man tabletop in 2015 that went super viral and ended up getting like 4 million views back then.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, where's that video?
It's actually in the lounge still. If you search, if you search KLU Jukin, you'll be able to find it.
Okay. Damn, dude.
I was search for the video to make sure I wasn't just saying bullshit. I wanted to go find the video myself, and that's what I just typed in my my search bar, and it pulled up. It was the first one. So
that's crazy. Like, it got 4 million views straight off. Like, was it a shared post?
Yeah, I think so. It was a public post in the lounge, and then it got shared, and then it got shared a bunch, and it just ended up accumulating 4 million.
That's huge.
They sold the rights to the video to that Jukin video company, so that way they could just kind of share it around, because that was back before monetization was, a commercialized thing.
True, dude. Okay, that's awesome, bro. So basically, new MF, Sad Boys, Slow Mo Squad, Clue. Are we missing it? Or those are basically the 5 main, or all? Or were there more crews? Were there smaller crews over time?
Yeah, there were a couple smaller ones. What was the one that Devin started? High Through Light, because he was obviously, a lot of Glovers smoke weed, and he was very straight edge at the time, and so he made a team, High Through Light, because he didn't want to feel excluded. But that was kind of just a smaller one. It ended up not being a sober exclusive team, obviously. He was 16 when he started it, so he was kind of younger in the scene. So I completely understand where his head was at, but I was just kind of one of those things. But it has since disbanded, obviously, due to inactivity. But he's more into music production now, anyway. But he's actually who taught me how to tut, because he was a dancer, and I had just posted in Glover's Lounge. I was like, "Yo, who's in Arizona?" And he had been in the lounge. He was like, "I'm in Arizona." Ended up only living 5 minutes from my house, so I was just like, "Tight, let's lab."
Yeah.
And that's where I learned how to tut. So that was actually pretty tight from a dancing perspective too. So I feel learning a form of dance to apply to gloving was definitely more positive for my gloving growth.
Absolutely. It's only positive. You can only learn more things from implementing different. I don't understand why some people don't like when people start dancing in their shows, then it's like it takes away from the experience, which is very closed-minded in my opinion. I know I've heard a couple people say this, but it's like really odd. Like we've got to implement more than just the hands, right? Because you're using more than your hands in gloving.
And I think it all comes down to how the execution and implementation is, because sometimes it can seem off or forced, but if it's practiced well enough and it fits into the flow of the show, I feel that any type of move can accentuate, a light show.
Absolutely. So was Arizona ever like, how do you say, was it ever really invested in anything that was going outside, like in California, like all the, because this is just where I'm coming from. Okay, so like, I guess the difference, like with Hawaii scene and Arizona scene, apart from like the individuality aspect, was there was so much shit happening in Hawaii that it was really hard to keep up with what was happening in like the Mecca, like California. Like it was almost kind of like, there were so many different styles and so much different events and competitions and events. It was so that California was not really like we would, if you had like a style that almost resembled like a California style, or like the mainland style, you were kind of shunned in the community.
Right.
That's actually what happened with one of the Glovers over here. I'm not gonna go too deep into it, but like it was like if you like followed that like style, it's like you're kind of shunned and you're kind of looked down upon for some reason, which is odd because Hawaii was very technical. It had a very it was more closer to like Vivid or like SS, and then platforming became a thing, right? And so everybody was platforming. So then like if you had like that whip style, it was kind of like not common. And then so like there's so much things happening that we never really paid attention to what was happening in California or all the other states, right? Was Arizona like similar to like that? Like were people talking about like what was happening in California? Like how much like out of state like comps would Glovers from Arizona attend to, if that was ever a thing, right? Like, I know I was talking about Defunct earlier, but I know he attended the IGC. So,
well, I mean, so AK definitely made competitions in Arizona a thing. He was the host. Yeah, I remember he hosted one at a bar that I couldn't even attend because I wasn't 21 yet. He hosted all of the competitions in 2015, 16, 17. He was the one who was hosting them for GGN until I took over in 2018 and 19. So there was never a lack of competitions here, but again, because we're kind of a low key scene, there never got the type of attention that the bigger competition did. So it was more like, yeah, we competed for camaraderie and everything within our competition and camaraderie within ourselves, but the bigger ones would be traveling to like IGC or anything hosted in California and coming back with tails or crates from that. I remember in 2014, 2015, and 2016, everybody always trying to like go to IGC, go to IGC, go to IGC. I'm like, all right, I'll go next year. I'll go next year. I'll go next year. And then 2017 didn't happen.
right.
So
Right.
Missed my opportunity, but I think IGC and California competitions were more the main focus for a lot of the Glovers here because everybody here knew each other. Winning a competition was more or less just like a community win because it was just like we got to have a competition, we got to see really good light. Everybody had fun. There wasn't a lot of drama or bad blood that came from it, so that was really nice. It was because we all got to see all the drama that came out of California competitions and stuff like that.
Right.
So it was kind of like we're all just sitting down, eating popcorn, watching it unfold.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was about to say, you guys are the kids that are just kind of just on the side, just watching all the chaos happen. That's really beautiful, man. Like, that's such a different, like, point of view to be in. Because in Hawaii, there was a rivalry, but it was never cutthroat. It was never got to the point of it being ever cutthroat. But yeah, like, I love that, man. That's literally one of the things that I would feel is just separates Arizona from basically all the other, communities out there, at least as far as the states goes, right? So I have a question. Do you have like statistically like all the competition placements? Is that like currently, like, would there be a way, like maybe it's on the Facebook group page where like you could see all the results? Is that possible?
Maybe not all the results, but I could probably do some digging and find the top 8 from all of the ones AK had. I could go through my emails with Brandon too and get the results from the ones I hosted pretty easily as well.
Yeah.
But off the top, I want to say, let's see, the winners of this most recent one. It was Preston who took first, and then Trump got second, and that was the one that I hosted in 2019. In 2018, I want to say it was Ruel and Preston, but I can't say for certain. I'd have to go back and find that. Preston has ended up winning a lot of competitions. He consistently throws really good competition shows, so I can't really fault him there. Well, he consistently throws good shows, but
Preston is, what's Preston's Glover name? Master Hand. Gotcha.
He's actually recently added to SS, which I think is just awesome.
Wow, SS is still adding. How did that work?
He went to G3 either last year or the year before, and he met Silky, I want to say.
Yeah.
They liked his style, obviously saw him compete, and he got to trade with a couple of heads there, and then they offered him a prospect spot, and then the next time he went out to California, he got to did trade with him again, and I think he's officially in.
That's really cool. Yeah, but wow, that's like news to me. S is still adding people.
Watching Great Dane videos on YouTube, and like fucking like one of the big inspirational teams for me. So just to see him get on it, I'm just like, damn, that's quality.
That's really cool. So like on the top of your head, like who would you say are like the top 5 statistically?
Statistically, Ruel, Preston, obviously, Boo Boo, because he's well, actually, Boo Boo would probably, statistically now he would, because of all of the online competitions that he's entered and done far in. But because he started in 2017, 2018, he didn't really see a lot of in-person competition. So not counting those older ones, let's see. I would list me there, but I'm not sure if that's 100% true. I just always remember scoring really high in the first rounds. Zan would probably be up there, and Johan, who actually goes by Merlin. He actually competed a lot. Another one who was a big competitive scorer.
Awesome, cool. Yes, I got that. Yeah, I kind of want to look back in the GL and then watch all the shows and kind of with this kind of this picture now that you've painted for AZ styles. So like just looking at their styles individually and kind of just like it gives me kind of like this newfound like appreciation for styles like individually. That's really cool, man. Well, was the gloving scene ever, how do you say, intertwined with other flow arts or dances?
So our FNLs have always been open to essentially anybody who wants to come through, even if you don't flow. Like if you just want to come listen to music and hang out, if you know, even if you don't know somebody there, as long as you're cool, like come hang out. We're friendly. But early on, before we started having our own FNLs, there were other shuffle meets because shuffling was big in Arizona because of the dance scene and just the electronic music. So people would go to shuffle meets at the marina down by Tempe Town Lake, and this kind of just like, oh well, the music's being played, so and people are already there dancing. Let's go dance with our hands. So we kind of tacked onto there for a little while, and just because a lot of the scene out here is just hanging out, just because there's not a lot of public spaces, so just kind of go hang out with your friends wherever you can find space to hang out with your friends. And then if you hear your friends are going to hang out, well, it's like, well, let's go hang out. Especially when you're in your 20s, like that's kind of just what 20-year-olds do. So we would, it was intertwined with shuffling for a little bit there. We obviously invite all sorts of flow artists, but not too many came unless they had already, been spinning. If they were like glovers and poi spinners,
right,
they would bring
right.
them, mostly be for training.
Gotcha. And was there like a specific company that Arizona repped?
I mean, obviously, because Amazing was the big one because they were the starter, and we just got a lot of the chips through them. But we had because we had the lit up lights, so we had any number of bulb chips that were available back then. When my first couple of sets were bulb chips from Amazings because that was the only site I knew. And then as futuristic lights didn't come onto the scene until 2014, 2015, around that time.
Mm-hmm.
I know a couple people. I got the Kinetics then, but it wasn't like an exclusive thing. It was just kind of like, if the chips are cool, then I'm going to use them. So I don't think it was more or less just like we like lights. If we like them, then we're going to use them.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. Yeah, like, the same thing with like Hawaii. They're like a couple. It was mostly Amazing, but like we also have our own dude who like sells bulbs and stuff for like older chips. So many similarities, bro, within like the two communities. What would you say are like some of the most historical events that has ever happened in Arizona scene?
Historically, obviously, the Mumbles party was pretty outrageous. If you were there, then it was really awesome. There was the mini competition we had in FNL one night, and that was a very hype competition. There was probably like only about 30 people there, but the energy at the park was just palpable. It was one of those because it was I remember me and Ruel competing and going at it, and it was Raja and Preston was there too. I want to say Johan was there, but I can't remember everybody. I really wish Zan had joined the call too, because he was there that night and he would be able to tell me more about it. But so I was in competition mode, so my brain doesn't really remember much. But it was just, the energy was so great, and everybody was so happy with the light shows that were being thrown because they were just so good, regardless of if you won competition. That it was honestly like a legendary competition.
Yeah.
It was a really fun time. There was also the probably 60-person competition.
Wow.
It was 32 competitors, but I want to say 60 or 70 people were at Dusty's house this one time.
Wow.
If I can find the picture, but it's just like a fisheye lens of everybody in the backyard. And it's just an absolutely crazy picture to look at. But there was that was another insane time. I want to say that happened in 2016.
Okay.
But like during the peak. So, but yeah, that was probably uh, an epic moment. When Hunter won Lights On, or got to the end of Lights On, we were all really happy because it's just like, damn, that's Arizona, you know, we like to
Yeah.
support our, and because he was so fresh on the scene when it happened, we were all just like, damn, he was he's a prodigy for sure. So it was really cool seeing him do all that. And then, I mean, obviously, let's see, both Boo Boo and Hunter having founded teams that have also grown to be large, Lame and LTCA in their own.
Mm-hmm.
Might not be an Arizona proud moment, but that's just a proud moment for me because I got to see them grow up in gloving and to see them already be leaving legacies as large as they are. It's just, you know, it's nice. It's nice to see that they care that much about the art.
What do you consider like the height of, like, what years would you consider the height of Arizona scene, and compare that to what do you think the peak of like the entire gloving scene? Like what do you think it was around that 2016 era?
I would honestly say, yeah, 2016, 2017 was probably like the peak era for Arizona scene, as well as just gloving in general, because Amazing was the longest standing gloving company that was most widely popularized, and they had the sponsorship program. It gave glovers something to aspire to. Like there was an end goal of gloving, because a lot of the times it is like you can still pursue it as a hobby and get something out of it. But if you want to progress and inspire and, you know, get good, essentially, you have to have a goal that you're trying to achieve. And sponsorship, because it was kind of this abstract thing that there wasn't a concrete step to achieve, it was just like you had to obviously be the community leader and do all of those things to grow gloving itself, but you also had to have a certain level of skill. But
Right, right.
is gloving skill is, you know, subjective. It's very difficult
Mhm.
to put down. So you don't know how good you have to be a sponsor. So you don't want your skill to be the thing holding you back. And I think because of that, there was a lot of innovation and inspiration and push to get better within gloving as a whole. And then when that kind of, because people could see it, it was like the peak. The gloving sponsors, they would go to festivals on Face Melt Crew. They'd get tickets. They had that IGC retreat for all the sponsors and everything. And, you know, it's like, dang, I want to do that. But then when that went away, it became more of a, you do gloving for self fulfillment or like
Yeah.
community fulfillment. And when you don't have, you know, a reward per se for doing the gloving thing, it kind of de-incentivizes people. Not that there should ever really be an incentive with the flow art other than wanting to do it, but that's just kind of how humans operate. So
Right.
when that went away, there was a lot less tangible prizes for being a good glover, and I feel like that good glover, that kind of fell apart.
Yeah, no, absolutely, bro. Like, and I agree. I think 2016, like maybe 2015 to 2016, was the peak of gloving, hands down. And if I remember, like in your eyes, like the mech, like what do you think? Like, where were the mechas at that point in 2016? Because it felt like California and then Hawaii, and I thought that Arizona was right there. You know, I
Yeah,
would.
I mean, given the online presence of a lot of the areas, I would have said probably Washington would have been one of them as well.
Right,
Like
right, right.
California area, San Diego, obviously, uh, Chicago was a powerhouse, and even New York was there for a little bit. Unfortunately, obviously, some of those communities are no longer there. I don't think the Colorado gloving community had quite taken off yet. I think their heyday was more 2017 to 2019 when
Mhm.
online gloving really taking off. Um, but I wouldn't be able to say for certain about that. But there were obviously you said Hawaii because all of the content that was coming out of it into the lounge. I mean, everybody here in Arizona knew it. Maybe Minnesota, just because of the names there, because you had William Brown and Trump and Jess all out of there, so there was a lot
Yeah.
of attention. There were a lot of names bringing attention to the area. Um, if there weren't specifically like a ton of glovers coming out of it, there was at least or maybe not a ton of Glovers posting from there, but there was enough attention on there to make it where people would want to travel.
Right, and Texas. Can't forget Texas. Like Texas is another big one. I was like, wait, I'm sure we're missing like one, right? I'm not sure if you know, but like DMV wasn't as big of a scene, but because they're just so widely spread apart, right?
Yeah,
maybe that's not a question for you, but
yeah, I think the DMV, like, I would probably include that more like in the New York area, just because out here on the West Coast things are so far apart. It's just kind of like that whole section of the country could fit in Arizona,
right,
so.
Dude. And like the East Coast, there's nothing happening in the East Coast right now. Not like nothing, like no comps or anything like that. But like, okay, so COVID happens, right? COVID happens. No one's doing anything. You not even try to have sessions.
Um, I want to say like because there honestly wasn't a lot. We did the new barbecue in 2020, but that was it, and there was probably 20 people there, and that was like one weekend, and that was it.
Why do you think that? I just want to hear your perspective on why do you think that it's so much harder today for people to want to come out to sessions, and why does it feel like that? We have this sense that like gloving is dying, obviously, because but from my point of view, big part of that was like amazing, the whole COVID thing. Why do you think it's taking so long for it to feel like it's how do you say, rejuvenating, I guess, like a better word?
Yeah, well, it also comes from we have a jaded perspective from it. We got to see it at its peak.
Yes.
So if we don't get conceptually, if we don't get back to that peak, obviously it's just, oh man, the good old days, right? But I want to say that even though gloving isn't as popping as it used to be, it's going back to its more niche roots, where it was it's kind of like it's if you know type style. But there's also the generational gap of social media in general. So where a lot of the gloving content where you and I grew up was getting posted, YouTube and Facebook in the Glover's Lounge, people are not even using that social media platform right now. They're using TikTok or Instagram Reels or whatever they're using. And unless the older generation who still wants to watch light shows are going to go to that platform to watch them to bridge that gap, or the newer generation wants to get more exposure and come back to the older platforms, I feel like new organic growth is probably happening, but outside of a large sphere of where we can see it. And because those new social medias are less community driven and more personal account driven, like a person can have a community who follows them and you can interact with like on comments per that person's videos, but there's not like, at least to my knowledge, like a whole page where you could just go to a TikTok and see everything that everyone's posted about a certain subject like gloving.
Right. Did you know that gloving.com right now is live?
Is live?
It's live. It's a thing. It's a thing this week. You can go to gloving.com, sign up for your name. There's like a whole like ecosystem that they're building. There's already power rankings on it. There's message boards on it. But it's like I love that you bring like up like the social media aspect, because now there's like, I'm sure you know that the owner of Throwlights, Andrew Shaw, bought gloving.com, right? And then like he planned on making it a hub, right? That's very how do you say, it's more central, like not centralized, right? Maybe that's not the right word, but it's not specifically for Throwlights or anything like that, right? How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think it could work if it wasn't another platform, if that makes sense, because people are used to utilizing the platforms that are there. Adding another one to the plate to kind of try to remember to use could be difficult for people who are already utilizing so many. Because I know for me, like I refuse to download restaurant apps because I'm just like, you have a menu there and just order off the menu. I don't need to have an app for. And so because Facebook or Instagram or TikTok allows you to kind of have that social media all in one, it's got gloving, it's got music, it's got art, it's got your friends, it's got whatever, but it's all on one app, and you don't have to get it all, but you can specify within the app to differentiate, if that makes sense.
Right. One of the biggest changes that has happened, like ever since after, well, I mean, during COVID, was like the diversifying, is that a word? The diversifying of where all the Glovers are spending their time on. So it's like you'll see like worldwide Glovers. Now we've got GA, right? People still post it on Facebook. So TikTok, you know, it's funny because it's maybe it's not a good measurement, but like I'll post shorts on like YouTube and like Facebook Reels and like TikTok. I've gotten a lot of views on like YouTube Shorts. And then so like there is still that audience there, whether it be just a random doom scroller. There is some level of like putting it out, but it just shows you like how much different. The Australian gloving community uses WhatsApp. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they use WhatsApp, bro. There's like 100+ people in that chat. So it's like, yeah, it's crazy. Like, where are all these? It's beautiful because it kind of like warps my understanding of where people are spending. Like, there could be a freaking community on Snapchat, bro. For all I know, I don't know. Twitter, maybe. I remember, if you know, was it Nari? Nari posted, Jomari, yeah, he posted like a light show video on Twitter probably like 4 or 5 years ago. It got like a lot of likes and a lot of views. So I'm like, wow, people are actually engaging with this stuff, not on Facebook. So it is possible, but like it feels so divided. But it's kind of like pick your tribe, like pick where you want to, you know what I mean? There's a certain like vibe in all these different platforms, and I like it, but I don't like it at the same time.
Yeah, because it's you have to change what you're presenting based on the platform you're posting on.
Right.
Like you said. So, and I mean, I know you've talked about it in a lot of your videos on the lounge, how you take your long form videos and you chop up the content to do your shorts, which, I mean, it's more power to you, because it's two videos with one essentially. And then you also get to access that audience who wants to watch your long form content, but also the people who are just maybe doom scrolling or don't want to invest that time to watch a long video. And I think because when people are going to throw a light show, there's already so much going on in their head that's not what they're thinking about. So maybe, but having one platform where you could post any, you know, type of style of light show, but be it like a short or, you know, a Glover's Lounge 5-minute video where it's you watch the whole thing and it's just like, damn, that was a really friggin' awesome show. I want to watch that again, or something like that, where you get immersed in the video. Something like that. It would be nice to have it all in one place, but it's just it'd be building people's familiarity with that area, and then also people who want to watch its familiarity with that area.
Right. With gloving.com, because most people are on like what? The Glovers that are upcoming today, right?
Yeah.
Probably on TikTok. It's probably TikTok. 100% TikTok. And then sort of like get people out of there and to try and incentivize people to go on gloving.com. It's harder today than it would have been 2016. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, especially because they're just like, you want me to go to a website? No, like.
Right. It's different, right? I've always wanted there to be like a forum, because back when I was younger, I'd play Smash and I'd go into these forums, and it was like the thing, bro. It felt like a home, and like 100. Now that it's finally here, it feels so late in the game to do that I just don't know. It's something I've always wanted, and like, yeah, Glover's Lounge was kind of like in my opinion, like the next best thing to it. The problem with like GL is just that there was history gets lost within GL.
Yeah, the problem with Glover's Lounge are all the problems with Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely. Toxicity and like, man, yeah, just I don't feel satisfied. I just don't feel satisfied with like Glover's Lounge as a forum for it to be like the hub. You know what I mean? To be like the place. It's just, okay, this is where everyone is, and so I'm just gonna be here.
Yeah, no, I also agree with that, because everybody is there, and I tell people, I'm like, if you can make it in Glover's Lounge and kind of get it, it's a great place to be.
Right.
Not like, unless you are socially versed enough to kind of read internet comments in a way where you can filter them, like
Yeah.
which most people aren't.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to view it as not only a welcoming place to share your art, but even a place to view the art in general.
Right.
Especially because all those inside jokes and camaraderie, and text doesn't read the same as voice. So something that is meant flippantly can be taken very seriously, and if you don't have the context for it, it can be detrimental.
There should be like a function on Facebook pages where there's no text comments. You can only record your voice. Imagine that, bro.
That would probably be more toxic, honestly.
Probably, actually. But yeah, so I guess so it's happening in Arizona. It's happening here. Like Hawaii's numbers, we got 5 Glovers who are just coming like every. That's Hawaii's numbers. Can you believe that? Like 5 Glovers every sesh. Hopefully once a month. So, and in 2021, you said that you had to turn on 25. Are there still events happening today? Like that sessions that are being held today?
Yeah, but it's not nearly as much. Like I said, we're kind of going back to the house party roots, and so it's generally closer to like 10 to 15 people per turnout. But I would say of those 15 people, like 10 of them are Glovers.
Right.
So you
got
5 pairs of trades at least to get. And when obviously sometimes people come around more often than others. So you get variations in attendance based on how long it's been since somebody's attended one.
Is there anyone currently, trying to rebuild it, or like, I know you said that you've kind of been given like passed down the torch, right? Is there still kind of like, are there new Glovers coming out of Arizona right now?
Not that I've seen, but I also I haven't been going to a lot of the mainstream events where a lot of newer Glovers would be to kind of interact with them. It's more of an environment thing. I'm not into that kind of music anymore,
right.
So I don't really those events. So I do my best when I see other Glovers around at events to trade with them, but normally it's like if I see another Glover, I probably brought them there.
Right. Okay, so like, but you don't hear any talk from other Glovers like, hey, like there's like a new Glover at this event or anything like that. There's like zero stories.
I haven't specifically heard it then, but I also know that a lot of the like we're getting older. A lot of the crew who goes to events aren't always looking for light shows, and then when they are, it's like their homies who are asking for a show.
Right.
Like, they want to trade, so it's one of those situations.
Yeah, I totally get it, man. It's kind of the same way here, except that Hawaii scene is so weird, bro. It's like there'll be like there's a lot of random Glovers who you'll see like, who the hell's that guy? And then like at a Nux event, there's like, who the hell's that guy? So it's like I never really knew how much Glovers there realistically were in Hawaii. Like,
right.
But there's always new faces. It kind of always makes me think, man, I feel like it could rebuild into like back to what it was if we just knew how to contact them somehow. What do you think would like make gloving pop off again?
So I think eMazing being a large advertiser as a gloving space definitely helped.
Yeah.
And given that all of the current companies are kind of only advertising to Glovers, granted, I've been a Glover, so I don't see outside advertisements that they're trying to bring in new people with. But if somebody saw you at an event and they're just like, yo, what is that? How can I get into this? You could very easily be like, hey, if you want a set, you can go to eMazing Lights, buy a set there. They had tutorials there, which you could watch, learn your basic moves from, and go from there. And obviously, eMazing's business model was built on bring as many new people in. As long as they buy a set, it doesn't really matter from there. But the people who see it as the art that it is and want to continue it will then develop it to be the community and bring people coming back. So like it's like a newcomer two people start together and then they inspire each other to continue to glove, something like that.
Yeah.
But because there's not really an easy place to be like, oh, where is this? Where can I go get that? It's a little bit. You don't have that kind of easy connection like you used to.
Yeah, and there's also like there isn't any chip on the market that really like that beginners can buy. Like, yeah, we have like the duos, but then those are like you're spending over $100 to get a set. There's
Yeah,
barely any sets. I mean, unless you're getting those really cheap pre-wires on like Amazon or something like that. Like, there really isn't a place where you can get a set for like $30 anymore, like $20 anymore,
yeah.
unless you're looking for bulbs, which as a newbie, no one is thinking that. Like, no one knows to think, oh, okay, like bulb chips, like, you know what I mean?
Especially because a lot of people who might be introducing someone to gloving probably don't even know about it because
Exactly. Right.
the bulb chips are so behind the meta right now.
Yeah.
Granted, they still provide great shows and they're an awesome option for lights. It's just like you said, is most people are not using those, and having that very high threshold to even start to invest in the kind of can deter people. Like I would say I've seen way more people who have gotten flow stars in the last year.
Wow.
Just at like a year ago, I never saw flow stars at shows, and now I see them everywhere. And I think it's just because it's a flow art, it's easy to dance with, and it's very easily accessible. It's like $10 to $20 to just get one of the things that you just throw around like pizza dough, and so it's easily accessible, and I think because, like you said, the lack of that and area to kind of familiarize yourself with the hobby itself outside of Glover's Lounge, which isn't very inviting, is a lot of the hurdles that we as Glovers would have to overcome to kind of bring that back. And then on top of that, probably to keep people continuing gloving, give them an end goal, kind of like the sponsorship program Amazing had, to kind of aspire to continue to glove. Because as nice as being good at gloving is, intrinsic motivation is normally very difficult to come by.
Right. So do you think that like it takes to get back to where we were, do you think that like it takes an entity to like market this thing to be like, hey, like in a way similar to basically what Amazing did, but you know what I mean? A different what again?
A different name.
A different name. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You think it takes like a big company to be able to do that again? And
so not specifically a company per se, like it could be a person who had the means to kind of network it, because it doesn't have to specifically be a company, because as long as you have the resources and the availability for newcomers to utilize it. So if you had just like you said, kind of like a forum essentially, where you could go and be like, oh, okay, here's all your gloving resources. If you want to buy, here's tutorials, or like if you are not sure, here are some moves to practice, to see if you're comfortable enough where you want to invest more money in a set where you would feel comfortable, spending that amount of money on a toy essentially. Something akin to that would probably help, but I honestly don't know specifically. I would probably have to brainstorm it a little more.
Yeah, it's a big giant question mark, right? Well, anyway, Sean, bro, I really appreciate your time, man. Where can people go for anybody who's watching, maybe in the future, who lives in Arizona and wants to get into gloving? Where can they go to connect with the Arizona gloving community?
The Phoenix Gloving Community page on Facebook is available. I'm the admin there, so I'll see your request to get in if you wanted to. You can always also just DM me on Facebook. I'm pretty friendly, and I can get you in the right spots where you need to be, as long as I'm not tired. I'm just Shenardo DeDraco on Facebook if you wanted to message. That's essentially the best spots for Arizona gloving.
For sure, man. Any last words you want to tell anybody?
Always practice your stretching. If you need some practice with drills or dexterity, Greg Irwin's Finger Fitness is my bread and butter. I will never stop preaching that. Thank you again for having me on, dude.
Of course.
I respect what you do with gloving and the growth of the community and all. And obviously, you're crazy skilled, so it's always great seeing you post and everything. So I appreciate what you're doing with just cataloging the history too, because I know it's a big part that not a lot of people kind of can touch on, and just having a tangible source of information to kind of go back on can kind of give people the frame of reference and context as to how gloving got to where it is and why things are the way they are in the gloving scene.
Absolutely, brother. And thank you again, once again. Like, I really appreciate your time. I will be posting all the project trails videos on the Gloving Academy Discord, discord.gg/Gloving Academy. I want to do like a huge catalog of all the leaders in the community. Just that way it's more easier accessible, and because I don't want the history of our art form to be lost, no matter where you're from. California, Hawaii, Arizona, anywhere. I want to like talk to anybody that is in a place that has gloving. So hit me up if you are one of those people. But thank you. Lastly, again, Sean, take it easy, brother.
Of course, you too. Peace out.
Peace out.